Good day, 'tis I, Lord Pendlebury, and good news, the Dacia Sandero comes with body-coloured door mirrors. No, that's not what it is. The good news is the microphone is working again. You know what fixed it? I took it out of a plug in an extension lead and I put it into a different socket in the same extension lead, and that's worked. Go figure. But yes. Anyway, we're now going to have an electrician getting in touch and telling me, Jesus fucking Christ, if that happens, you need to, I don't know, fix your electrics. Who knows? Doesn't matter. We're going to be moving soon, hopefully. So, yeah, anyway, I'm not sure why I decided to mention that. Anyway, if you would like to come and get involved, we have some reasons down here. We have a website down there. You can comment on the video and ask to get involved. I don't monitor the comments, so I should probably go and have a look at them to see if anybody has commented asking to get involved. But who knows? We'll find out. But good news. Decent sound quality for this week. Might fuck it again next week, but who knows. What were we doing this week? We were in... Jesus Christ, it was shit. Sorry, that doesn't really say... Well, actually it does, because it wasn't an easy drive. LMP3s at Hockenheim for your viewing pleasure. Do enjoy. Yeah, let's go. Well, good day, 'tis I, Lord Pendlebury, because I don't think I said that at the start of the video, and welcome to Hockenheim. We are just outside Hockenheim. In fact, we're just on the eastern edge of Hockenheim. We, of course, will be racing here, because that's where we are. It'd be odd to turn up to this track and then race somewhere else. So, yeah, let's take a look at the grid. Well, on pole position was Will Thomas. He's been setting some blistering times in practice and has set a pretty decent time in qualifying as well. He's accompanied by Dan Slattery on the front row of the grid. Nice close times. Expect that to be a close battle race long. Jeff Sharp, he wasn't too far off the pace either. He's in third with Lord Pendlebury alongside in fourth. Ricky Worrell was then in fifth with James Hurlow in sixth. In first place in the AM category and seventh overall is Chris Hulse. He had Jamie Nicholson in the Pro category alongside him. Chris Palmer and Steve Moore then came next with Anthony Marriott and Paul Nicholson following up. Axel Edwards was then in 13th overall and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th in class. Brian Dodd was then in 6th in class, and then on the final row of the grid, Big Dick's halfway in Steve Everson in 15th. Now, of course, it is a rolling start in the LMP3s. Dan Slattery getting a bit carried away with things. The safety car will peel off to the right-hand side, and it is now on Will Thomas to decide when to go. Now is that time. Pulls across, takes the racing line, gets a nice jump on Dan Slattery. Swinging through the first corner. Looking nice and neat thus far. In fact, looking nice and neat everywhere, all the way down the grid. Oh, heading out of that little complex of turns 2, 3 and 4. Who is that alongside someone? I think that may be Jamie Nicholson. Indeed he is. He is up the inside of James Hurlow. And that is Chris Hulse making a move on both of them. Can he get the job done? Heading towards the fast right-hander of 7 before they come up to Mercedes. And he does get that job done. Oh, Jamie Nicholson almost looking to turn himself around there. Well, they have managed to get through all unscathed at the moment. Side by side. Oh, someone's going to be forced out wide there. I think that was Hurlow. Oh, and that is somebody into the barriers. Who are you, Steve Moore? And back to the pits he goes. And one lap in the book. It is a quick lap here at Hockenheim in these LMP3s. That is the chrome liveried Jeff Sharp. Getting to that time of the season where we're excitedly anticipating the new liveries for next season. And it looks like James Hurlow has got past Jamie Nicholson. Jamie Nicholson, will he look to the inside? Decides yes. Oh, that is somebody going round ahead of them. That is Ricky Worrell. Brian Dodd getting into strife, into the barriers. That was a big hit. Spun round, and that was, I believe, Steve Everson did a good job there of avoiding him. Axel Edwards looking close and on the back of Paul Nicholson here. He's got Ricky Worrell for company. Not anymore, though. Ricky Worrell spins into the infield section, lighting those tyres up. That will be even harder to drive than it was originally. And you can see it's twitching as he comes out of Sudkurve. Right then, let's take stock of where we are then. So, in the pro category, we have Will Thomas leading the way. He's got Dan Slattery just 0.7 of a second back. We then have Jeff Sharp. He's about 1.5 seconds back, with Lord Pendlebury 0.8 seconds back from him. James Earler and Jamie Nicholson already been having a good old battle in this one so far, and Jamie Nicholson still just 0.7 of a second behind him at the moment. Ricky Worrell, we've seen him getting into strife, and Steve Moore into the barriers on that first lap. He's in 8th place. In the AM category then, Chris Palmer, here he is, hard on the brakes, and he runs a little bit wide there. He is leading the way, though, in the AM category. We then have Chris Hulse. He's in 2nd place, 1.5 seconds back. Then a bit of a gap back to Paul Nicholson, and then Axel Edwards, who is right on the back of Paul Nicholson. We will see them now, in fact. They are right in front of us, heading down towards the final complex of corners before the end of the lap. After Edwards, we have an 8-second gap back to Steve Everson. Anthony Marriott's 1.6 seconds off the back of him, and Brian Dodd is then in 7th place, 37 seconds back. Looks like Lord Pendlebury has got into strife. There he is, recovering. Unsure what happened there. I suspect he may have spun on the last corner. Even I am him and I can't remember. I think I did. Nicholson goes defensive here. Edwards looking to the outside. Can he sweep all the way around the outside? I think he can. There's still a little bit side by side, still a bit of an overlap, but there isn't any more. Very nice move there from Axel Edwards. That promotes him up into 3rd place in class. And it looks like Jamie Nicholson has had some issues. Here he is, just been passed by the Edwards and Nicholson battle. The Nicholson without an H has had a moment. He's now 7.5 seconds off the back of Pendlebury in 5th, and he has to pull into the pits. He may well have picked up damage there then. Oh, and that is somebody going round. It's Chris Hulse. Pendlebury and Palmer, I think it was. No, Pendlebury and someone, not sure who it was, were having to take evasive action there. Wow, this is what happened with Chris Hulse then. Caused chaos for those behind him. Just loses it, then slithers back onto the track. And, oh, it's close with Pendlebury and Palmer, but they just about get past him. Wow, things have changed in the AM category. Despite me focusing on crashes, it didn't decide to pick this one up, but Chris Palmer has had an incident coming out of the final turn, I believe. That has handed Chris Hulse the lead back after Chris Hulse in turn had thrown it away. Axel Edwards has now been promoted up into 2nd place then. But Chris Palmer just half a second back. Let's see if he can close that gap back down. Meanwhile, in the pro category, Dan Slattery and Will Thomas's battle has raged on, and Jeff Sharp is also there to an extent, about 2.5 seconds off the back of Slattery, but Will Thomas has just slowly been eking that gap out. It's just crept to above a second now. Oh no, and Palmer, in trying again, has gone all the way round. Paul Nicholson is also involved somehow, I think. Oh, and round he goes again. He can he get it back onto the track this time? He can, but there's Jamie Nicholson having to avoid him. Pendlebury closing up on him as well, but I think they were entirely separate incidents there. Maybe Paul Nicholson just spun in sympathy, having seen Chris Palmer do that beforehand, but this has gone from shit to shitter for Chris Palmer, because he was leading the way with a nice comfortable gap, and well, it's all gone wrong since then, really. That's Paul Nicholson reversing into the barriers there, loses his spoiler, and that will not help with his rear downforce. Jesus fucking Christ, I've forgotten to play everyone's second favourite game. Well, let's have a quick look and see who the big winners and, more importantly, the biggest losers are. Well, quite clear in the pro category, biggest loser is Jeff Sharp. Well, I've completely missed that. I'll tell you what, the iRacing's Focus on Crashes feature is shite. Either that or, like, there's just so many going on, it can't keep up. But yeah, Jeff Sharp, biggest loser. Congratulations to you in the pro category. Biggest loser in the AM category is that'll be Anthony taking him out. That is Paul Nicholson struggling to deal with that lack of a rear wing, and out he gets. And what's going on here then? That's Dan Slattery. He's still progressing. I think he may well have had a moment, though. Well, that really is a moment. But, yeah, biggest loser in AM category is Anthony Marriott, and biggest winners shared between Edwards, who's in second, and Everson, who is in fourth. And this is what happens to Jeff Sharp. Entry into turn one, and, well, he's on the grass, and that is... Wow, that's a massive impact. He's not going to go anywhere with a wheel up that high. Oh, Tim Turlo. Oh, another big impact there. Oh, and onto his roof he goes. Take another look at that. All over the curbs, and then big hit. Jabs into the concrete barrier. Oh, Slattery. Well, it decides to cut away from him at the crucial time. Fucking iRacing, that's just bollocks. A crash starts to happen and you think, oh, no, we're focusing on crashes, let's cut away. But yeah, Slattery does manage to recover it. He has got Jeff Sharp behind him, but after Jeff Sharp's little incident, he is a lap down on these guys. Just 2.5 seconds off the back of Steve Moore, though, so the battle for 7th is not done and dusted yet. We are closing in the final few minutes of this one. Well, we join Will Thomas then for the final couple of corners. Had to fight off a prolonged attack from Dan Slattery, but he takes the checkered flag. Slattery eventually made a mistake. Thomas still going absolutely at it after the race has finished. Oh, and he's really going to go at it here. Oh, kaboom! And well, yeah, there goes the engine. Now let's join Chris Hulse. He enters the final section of the track. Heading round that long left hand of Sachs. Through 13, 14, the right-hander of 15, and then into Sudkerv. And he takes yet another AM class victory. Right then, let's move ourselves to a nice scenic view and take a look at those race results. Starting off with the AM category then, Chris Hulse, as we've just seen, took the checkered flag. Axel Edwards was then in second place. Chris Palmer rounded out the podium. He was 21 seconds back in the end. Steve Everson, a good race for him, started in 7th up to 4th place. Paul Nicholson was then in 5th, 4 laps down from the end he retired. Brian Dodd was 6th and 6 laps down from the end when he retired, and Anthony Marriott was 7 laps down from the end when he retired. Taking a look at the pro category then, Will Thomas, as we saw, he ended up crossing the line 16 seconds ahead of Dan Slattery. That doesn't tell the full story. It was a good race-long battle until, well, it wasn't. That was when Dan Slattery cocked things up. It was then Lord Pendlebury, after his accident, he will be very happy to get on the podium. Jamie Nicholson, he was then in 4th. We then had James Hurlow, Ricky Worrell, Steve Moore and Jeff Sharp. They were all a lap down, but they were in 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th respectively. We will take a short break and we'll be back with the feature highlights in just a second. Hello then, and welcome back to Evolution Sim Racing. We are embarking upon round 14, still in the LMP3s. Of course, it is the feature race, 45 minutes with mandatory pit stop. Track temperatures looking maybe a little bit cooler than they were in the first race. I can't remember. There's some weird UFO shit going on in the background. Take a look at that. Something's trying to communicate with us in the distance there. Not sure what that is. But anyway, let's go to a different view and play everybody's favourite game. It is time for Guess That Livery. And, well, who's that creeping ahead? That is that pole sitter? I think that's pole sitter Ricky Worrell. Alongside him, he has Simon Moore. He's in the blue vehicle. I tell you what, let's just acknowledge how wonderful I am. Like, I was going to whip through this and be efficient, but I've actually gone straight to a camera view that has everybody in sight. It's also in slow motion, which helps. So yeah, after Simon, we've got... that'll be James Hurlow. We then have Will Thomas alongside him, Jamie Nicholson, and then Jeff Sharp is there for company. Lord Pendlebury, he's way off the back of Jamie Nicholson, but he is next. And then it is championship leader Dan Slattery. We then have... well, that's very confusing. I'm sure Chris Palmer is not bottom of the championship of the people that are left. Then again, maybe he is, because there's only 4 AM category drivers. So it is headed up by good old Chris Palmer. We then have Brian Dodd with Chris Hulse and... oh, I just realised I've done this the wrong way around. Oh well. Then it's Steve Everson... not at the back. Chris Hulse is at the back. Basically just reverse all of the pairs that I've done, and then it's the right order. You're welcome. Well, they are about to round the final turn. There is the pit entry. The pace car goes in. Ricky Worrell is leading the way, so maybe I was right in my original rundown of the grid. Who knows? Let's wait for Ricky Worrell to drop the hammer, and he does, and my goodness, what a start that is. Pulls out several car lengths. Heading down towards turn 1. And through they go. Looking neat and tidy so far. Oh, there's somebody collecting cones. They are 4 wide. This is going to end in tears, is it? It is. Will Thomas goes round. Sharp involved. Nicholson involved. I think there was some assistance there in that turn, but wasn't really a lot of manoeuvre, place for people to manoeuvre. We then have Chris Palmer right up the back of Jeff Sharp. Oh, and that is somebody else going round. That would be Steve Moore. And he's lost his spoiler. That will not do his downforce any good at all. Ricky Worrell, meanwhile, leading in the pro category, has scampered away. He's got James Hurley behind him and Lord Pendlebury as well. It's all still very congested as they head into the last sector. Oh, that was Will Thomas almost firing himself into the barriers there. That would not have been good for him. Into the last sector they are now. And through they go. Oh, that is not through they go. That's Chris Palmer just about keeping it out of the barriers. And that will relegate him down to last in class. And indeed overall, I believe. Oh no, Steve Moore is all the way down at the bottom. Well, let's bring up some race information then. And that is James Hurlow dropping down the order. Something has happened to him. Well, there he is. And rumour has it he's backed it into the barriers coming out of turn 4. Let's take another look then and see what happened. So it's Pendlebury, Thomas, Nicholson and Sharp 4 wide. And yeah, I mean, it's impressive that nobody else really collected them. But that rather lay the writing on the wall for Will Thomas. Now, this is what happened to James Hurlow. He was in second at the time and just loses it coming out of turn 4. Wow, this all happened at the same time, heading down to the hairpin for the first time. This was Dan Slattery, all on his own, but just carries a little bit too much speed. But you can see there, that is Steve Moore. Does really well to get himself out of the way of the on-rushing pack, but unfortunately loses his spoiler. Wow, taking stock then, as things have now settled down a little bit. We are on the 3rd lap at the moment. That is Ricky Worrell. He is leading the way in the Pro category. He's got Lord Pendlebury 2.2 seconds further back, but Pendlebury is starting to close that gap down. It's then 2.2 seconds to Dan Slattery in 3rd. Jeff Sharp's then in 4th with Will Thomas in 5th. Jamie Nicholson is then in 6th with James Hurlow in 7th. And Steve Moore is a long way off the back, unfortunately having to go into the pits for repairs, as did James Hurlow, I believe. But I think Steve Moore had to tow, whereas Hurlow did not. Now, taking a look at the AM category, and Chris Hulse is leading the way. He is he leading the way? He's got... No, he's not. Chris Hulse is looking ahead. Currently, Brian Dodd is leading the way in 1st place. Chris Hulse 1 position further back. Brian Dodd in the purple machine, not the yellow one. That is Jamie Nicholson. Brian Dodd leads the way in a nice little gaggle this lot. Then it's Chris Hulse, Steve Everson and Chris Palmer. Oh, and I think something has happened to Ricky Worrell. Indeed it has. This is a fantastic angle to view it from. Where is Ricky Worrell? There he is. He was our leader. Right, he's now handed that to Pendlebury. Things looking very close though in the AM category. Well, look at them. There might only be 4 of them in this feature race, but they are all having a whale of a time. Chris Hulse looks like he's plucked the lead from Brian Dodd. He's on the inside line. Then Chris Palmer, is he going to make it? Oh, there's a little bit of contact there. Palmer, oh, they somehow managed to squeeze through. There was a little bit of bumping. Steve Everson, the victim in all of that. Hasn't lost too much time though, but he is now at the back of this gaggle of cars. Chris Palmer now looking up the inside of Brian Dodd. Opts out of sending it. It is an ever-closing gap, the old vortex of danger. Right, you feel like Chris Palmer is keen to get past Brian Dodd and get onto the back of Chris Hulse. Oh, that's Brian Dodd. He goes round. Palmer manages to avoid it. And that's unfortunate. It was some good running early on in this race from Brian Dodd. And he's now dropped a fair few seconds off the back of this pack. And looks like Jamie Nicholson has made a move on Ricky Worrell. Oh, there is a very close-up of Jamie Nicholson. And at the front of the pro category, Dan Slattery, he has been closing in on Pendlebury. It's safe to say Slattery definitely has more pace than Pendlebury, and how quickly that gap has closed down. And something has happened to Steve Everson. He was right on the back of Chris Palmer. However, Brian Dodd is now right on the back of him. I suspect a spin. That was looking like it was going to be a tasty little battle for first place in the AM category, and it still may well be between the two Chris's. But Steve Everson has firmly checked out, and Dan Slattery here is right on the back of Pendlebury in the pro class. You only feel like it is a matter of time. Could time be now? Heading down towards the hairpin. What a camera this is. Slattery pulls to the inside. Can he get it stopped? He can. Clips that apex very nicely. And into the lead he goes. I'll tell you what, Chris Palmer looks like he has got a decent run on Chris Hulse here. He got a pretty excellent run out of turn 4. Looks to the inside as they head down towards the hairpin. Both braking simultaneously there. That's Jamie Nicholson running a little bit wide ahead of them. But that's a very nice and tidy move there from Chris Palmer. Gets it stopped around the apex, echoing Dan Slattery's move on Lord Pendlebury just a few moments ago. Well then, we are just over the halfway mark in this feature race, and here is our pro leader. That is Dan Slattery. It is then 4.3 seconds back to Lord Pendlebury. It is then a further 4.8 seconds back to one Jeff Sharp. Will Thomas, there he is. He's a fair way back, 41 seconds back, but it's important to note that Slattery, Pendlebury and Sharp have not yet pitted. Jamie Nicholson, he's also pitted. He's 16 seconds off the back of Will Thomas. And then have Steve Moore. He is the final runner in the pro category. He is in the pits getting his tyres replaced and probably getting some fuel. Ricky Worrell and James Hurlow have sadly retired. Then in the AM category, Chris Palmer is leading the way. He is 4.8 seconds ahead of Chris Hulse, as you can see there. Then we have Steve Everson, proclaims that this is one of his favourite tracks, but it is being ruined by this car, and it is a tricky little blighter. Not one that we're expecting to see on the roster again for a while, I think, in Evolution Sim Racing. And then we have Brian Dodd. He is 21 seconds off the back of Steve Everson. And yeah, well, that is where we currently are. Well, something that I've missed then, because I'll be honest with you, I am multitasking and it didn't switch to it, but Chris Hulse and Chris Palmer have switched positions. That is Jeff Sharp getting past Brian Dodd to lap him. But yes, Chris Hulse is now leading the way, 2.9 seconds ahead of Chris Palmer. Not sure what happened there. Looks like it may just have been in the pit stops. I'm not sure how he's managed that though. Not sure whether Chris Palmer cocked up his pit entry or cocked something up. But no notes of Chris Palmer having an accident. So yeah, well, Chris Hulse now leads the way in the AM category, but Chris Palmer, as you can see, that gap has come down by 2/10 in the time that I've been rambling on. So yeah, can he catch him? Got about a quarter of an hour of this one to go. Oh, I know I complained about this in the first race, but this crash detection system on iRacing is doing even worse than it usually does, because we are on board with Will Thomas, and that is Jeff Sharp up ahead of us. And Jeff Sharp has had a spin, and that means that Will Thomas is all over the back of him as we enter the closing stages of this. This, of course, means Lord Pendlebury has a bit more breathing room because Jeff Sharp was slowly closing in on him. So, good news for Pendlebury, bad news for Sharp. Will Thomas will be licking his chops. This is what happened to Jeff Sharp then, heading towards Mercedes. And, oof, I tell you what, he's lucky that didn't launch the car a bit more over the sausage curb. Oh, that is Will Thomas. And into the barriers he goes. He almost held it together there, but couldn't quite, and I suspect that will be the end of his race. Steve Moore promoted up into 5th as a result of that. Jamie Nicholson promoted up into 4th as a result of that. Jeff Sharp will breathe a sigh of relief as we know, Will Thomas was applying some considerable pressure to him in these closing stages. Looks like it will be a leisurely drive to the end, though, for most. Well, apparently not this chap, though. That is Jeff Sharp. Around he goes again. A leisurely spin to the end for Sharp there. Oh, that's Dan Slattery going out wide as well. All of a sudden, the instant camera has actually started working. I'll tell you, my incident log tracker is... Oh, and there's Pendlebury going off as well. Jesus Christ. My little event tracker is... All there is such and such crash, such and such crash, such and such went off track, such and such went off track. There's no overtakes in there at all. Another angle of Will Thomas's fateful crash, and yeah, his arms must have been going like a fiddler's elbow. And I'll tell you what, I said a leisurely drive to the end for everyone, but that is Jeff Sharp, just 1.6 seconds off the back of Pendlebury. Jeff Sharp will be kicking himself, because if he hadn't had that spin down at the hairpin, he would be in 2nd place now. We are in the final closing laps of this one. Just a couple of laps to go. This is Chris Palmer getting past Brian Dodd. Oh, this is Chris Palmer letting Brian Dodd back past in extravagant fashion. Well, that undoes a lot of hard work. His gap to Chris Hulse was around 1.2, 1.3 seconds, and it was looking touch and go for Chris Hulse on whether he'd be able to hold on to the lead till the end of the race with Chris Palmer's pace. But Palmer has pasted it up the wall there. It looks like positions largely sorted out for the AM category then, and in the Pro category, the battle between Sharp and Pendlebury has had closed into about a second between the two of them, but Sharp's made an error, and that's allowed Pendlebury a second to get up the road. And that should be enough for Pendlebury. He can cruise round this last lap, which they are just about to head on to now. The white flag is flying over on the right-hand side as we cross the line. Well, here is Dan Slattery coming around at the final few turns now. He has done an excellent job in this race, avoided the chaos in those early laps, and got past Pendlebury and hasn't really looked back since. That gap is now standing at just under 24 seconds. He takes the win. Congratulations to Dan Slattery there. There is Chris Hulse. He is coming around Mercedes. But he is looking like he will take the AM category win. Around Sachs he goes. Through the penultimate corner, around the last corner. Nicely done there. Mr. Chris Hulse, he takes the win in the AM category. Well then, the aliens are back and doing some weird flashy signals. I hope you guys can see that on your screen, otherwise I've got some potential health concerns. But let's take a look at those results then, this time starting with the Pro category. Well, as we saw, Dan Slattery ended up being 24.5 seconds ahead of Pendlebury in second place. Jeff Sharp just a second and a half back from Pendlebury. Jamie Nicholson was then in fourth, just over a minute off the leader. Then Steve Moore was in fifth, but one lap down. Will Thomas retired 4 laps from the end, but he claimed sixth. Ricky Worrell was 25 laps down, and James Hurlow was 8 laps down at the end. And then in the AM category, not many of them stuck around for the second race. Chris Hulse, he was in first place. Chris Palmer, 4.2 seconds back, and Brian Dodd rounding out the podium, but was 1 lap down. And Steve Everson, he retired 13 laps from the end. Big Dick's halfway in, is Big Dick's only halfway through. Well, as we can see here, Chris Hulse absolutely dominating the AM category. Some say he will never be put back into the AM category following his promotion to the Pro category. He leads the way, 302 points, and Anthony Marriott is in second on 171 points. Chris Palmer, he's on 155 in third. Just 2 points back is Steve Everson on 153. Josh Levy, he was then in 123rd. No, he's in fifth place on 123 points. Paul Nicholson's in sixth on 108 with Brian Dodd behind on 99. Then it's Axel Edwards on 91. Josh Morris is then on 29. Mark Wardley rounds out the top 10 in the point standings on 23 points. Travis Torrado is then in 11th with 18, and good old Mickey Dolan, he is in 12th on 10 points. Then, taking a look at the Pro standings then, Dan Slattery leads the way. He has extended his lead over Lord Pendlebury, 244 points to him, to Pendlebury's 215. It's then 30 points back to Jeff Sharp on 185 points, with Jamie Nicholson just 5 points back in fourth on 180. It's then Will Thomas, he's in fifth place on 172, with James Hurlow in sixth on 138. Steve Moore's then in seventh on 116, with Ricky Warren in eighth on 86. Nelson Berdier partook in just 1 round so far this season, so he is in ninth on 18 points. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Next week, if we thought it was loose and harum-scarum in the LMP3s, well, it's about to get a whole lot worse, because we are heading to Watkins Glen and we are in the NASCAR trucks. So join us for that. Thank you very much for your company. Good night.